Hey everyone! This is yet another video I've been looking forward to making for a while. In order to set it up, I had to get my Wii U back up and running, as it's the place I've been keeping my virtual console copy of the game. What am I talking about? A little title known as Sin and Punishment. Considered to be one of the greatest games on the Nintendo 64, and one of Treasure's biggest accomplishments to date, I knew it would be worth revisiting. So let's hop right in and talk about how well Sin and Punishment for the N64 holds up today. Released in 2000 for the Nintendo 64 in Japan, Sin and Punishment is a rail shooter developed by the folks at Treasure, makers of Gunstar Heroes, Alien Soldier, Mischief Makers, Ikaruga, Bangai-O, and a host of other titles we've come to love over the years. Needless to say, the company already had a great track record, even before Ikaruga would come and sweep us off our feet. The game began its development back in 1997, about a year after the N64's release, but the development time took longer than expected. So much longer, in fact, that the game didn't actually see a release until 2000, just around the end of the system's lifecycle. The developers cited issues with developing 2D gameplay on a 3D plane that we would come to see in the final product. The game had modest sales in Japan, and unfortunately never saw the light of day in the US, until 2007. After an exceedingly high demand to bring the game over to the States, Nintendo finally released Sin and Punishment for the Wii's Virtual Console service, and later the Virtual Console for the Wii U as well. So what exactly is it like? Well, in a rail shooter, the concept involves your character going in one specific direction automatically, while you dodge and shoot within the smaller frame of movement you're given. This tends to give the game a more cinematic feel, as it allows specific events to unfold in front of you while you're working on staying alive. Titles like Panzer Dragoon and Star Fox 64 are other examples of this style of game. The story in this game is too much to describe. You have so much thrown at you in such a small amount of time that it's almost impossible to follow it all on your first playthrough. Take the plot of a really convoluted 13-episode anime series, and you've probably got the gist of what you're in for here. And honestly, there is an interesting story to be told in all of this. I mean, this is a game that asks you to take on a fake Earth while simultaneously protecting the real one from its attacks. This is not your usual game setup. The game's story is presented through cutscenes in between the stages with full English voice acting, even in the original Japanese version.
Passed her blood to me. The same goes for that kid who transformed into the beast.
Saki is nothing like you. I never thought you'd try to make friends by passing your blood.
Interestingly enough, the only actual change made to the US release was updated English menus. Everything else was exactly the same, including Japanese subtitles for the English dialogue. As for the quality of the voice acting itself, you'll likely find it to be monotone, and overall unemotional and disproportionate with the events happening around them.
Idiots! Don't you realize how dangerous teleporting is? They're dangerous! They're about to kill me!
That said, it still gets the job done, and won't stop you from enjoying the gameplay itself. So the gameplay. Let's finally talk about the gameplay. Treasure wanted us to take advantage of the D-pad, something most N64 games simply did not emphasize on. While using the analog stick to aim, the D-pad was used for moving the character left and right, as well as dodge rolling to the sides. This is not including the shoulder buttons, which are used for jumping. The game also has two types of targeting systems, manual and lock-on, which is basically automatic. Personally, I much preferred the manual aim. It definitely took some getting used to, as I still don't think I've ever played another game with controls quite like this one, but I felt much more comfortable with the layout after about 20 minutes or so. Thankfully, the game provides a great training section that teaches you all of the controls and combat maneuvers. On top of shooting and dodging, you also have the ability to slash enemies that come close to you by hitting the shot button after they've gotten into a close enough proximity. You can also knock back missiles that are being shot at you this way. This worked well for me most of the time, but there were a few instances where an attack would slip through. This was likely due to my own timing being off, though. For being such a short game, and with so few actual stages, 3 in total, the places and enemies you encounter are impressively varied. The stage where you fly through an entire fleet of air carriers and fighter jets was my personal favorite, as it was pure chaos from beginning to end. I found myself replaying this stage the most, just for the sheer enjoyment of it. There's also seemingly no end to the amount of boss fights you encounter, each with their own unique patterns and strategies. This is a game that will keep you on your toes until the very end, that much is certain. There's also the difficulty. Normal mode is difficult, especially if you're still getting the hang of the controls. Everyone will have different preferences for this, but I personally recommend trying the game on easy mode first, to get a feel for everything you'll encounter, and then jumping to normal in order to perfect the same challenges and techniques you learned before. I know there are people who will cry foul with that suggestion, and I fully understand that, but I honestly do believe you'll be able to appreciate and enjoy the game a lot more through this direction. The game also looks incredible for the time it came out. Being released on the tail end of the N64's lifecycle, the game's developers truly knew how to take advantage of the system's graphical capabilities, and created some of the smoothest looking graphics the system had ever seen. Not getting this in the States until years later was truly a crime of the highest offense.
Cold-blooded killers.
If there's anything I'd say I disliked about the game, it's the fact that I wish it were longer. While I absolutely loved every stage we got, it felt like much too little by the time the credits began to roll. I also wish the controls had a bit of an easier adjustment process, but I honestly blame that on the design of the N64 controller much more than the game itself, as I truly believe Treasure did everything they could here. There's not really much more to add to this one. Treasure is a company with a great track record, and this game is no exception to that. Although we didn't originally get this one in the States, I was very relieved that Nintendo decided to put it out on the Virtual Console service years later. The success of this game eventually led to a sequel for the Wii called Sin and Punishment: Star Successor. This is considered by many to be the superior game, and I'd love to tackle that one again sometime too. In the meantime, I'd say this first entry was still well worth your time. Whether or not you decide you want to purchase it will be dependent on how much you enjoy replaying stages to beat your high score, and reliving the awesome action sequences that get thrown at you every second. And that's gonna do it for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.